Hello and welcome to the Irish Fire Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Houghton. I'm an entrepreneur, investor, and financial independence enthusiast, sharing my financial freedom journey. Stay tuned and welcome aboard. In today's episode, we speak with Robert White, and I met Robert at the Fire Madrid conference. And what's amazing about his story is that Robert's in his 30s, but he has retired, or at least he is officially financially independent. So I talk with Robert about how he was able to do this, about his mindset around having the motivation to actually do it. You'll hear in the interview about the sort of side projects that he did and sort of how he tackled something which seems so impossible for so many of us. We then touch on what Robert is doing today, and he talks specifically about an environmental project that he is very passionate about. So enjoy the interview. I think there's a lot of great nuggets in there. And as always, if you have any questions, reach out to me at michael@firepodcast.ie. Let's cut straight over to the interview. Robert White, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Happy to be here.
What's exciting for me is you're actually the first guest on the show who has actually become financially independent. So we're extremely excited to hear your story and I guess how you did it and how long it took. So, let's start with the obvious question. When did you discover the FIRE movement and how long did it take you to actually become financially independent?
I can't even remember the year, but must have been like 2012, 13 or something like that. I was reading about Mr. Money Mustache in Lifehacker, I think. It was an article about him, so I got into Mr. Money Mustache and basically read all of his posts. But before that, I read Robert Kiyosaki and listened to most of his audiobooks and stuff like that. I wasn't very fond of, I didn't really like everything what Kiyosaki said, but I think Mr. Money Mustache, that's the source that influenced me a lot more.
So obviously you discovered this, but how do you go from that to actually taking action and I guess changing your lifestyle so that you could actually start doing this? Or did you already have a sort of a career set up where, you could actively save quite easily? Or, how did you kind of approach it from there?
Well, my intention was not becoming FI per se. My problem was that I was self-employed and I didn't pay into the pension fund in Germany. So when you're self-employed in Germany, you could do private pensions, which is not a good idea in a lot of cases, and it comes with a lot of high cost funds, high cost products, and so on. So I didn't really trust that. So what we did is we started investing in rental real estate, and our goal was to become pensioners or go and retire when we're 50. So that was our first goal. Once we started getting into the real estate market, and we basically started calculating how many little apartments do we need until they're paid off and their rent is roughly covering our expenses. We started calculating our expenses, started asking around what kids cost and what, tracking our expenses and all this stuff. So, that was our first thing that we did towards a FI, but we didn't know it was called a FI back then. So it was all about pension and having a safety net, basically.
Very good. But and I've obviously met your wife at the Fire Madrid conference, and I can tell you guys are both on the same page, which is amazing. So we'll touch on that a little bit later on as well. But you were only how old were you in 2012, 2013? I'm assuming that you weren't that old. So I guess my question is, for you to actually have that vision to look that far ahead back when financial independence wasn't even a thing. Fair play, right? Like that took a bit of guts to actually work this sort of stuff out, I guess.
I was about 30.
And since you became financially independent, and obviously it took a lot less until you were 50. So actually let's touch on that a little bit before we delve further. Obviously it didn't end up taking 20 years. It took a lot less than that. So was that because you sort of bought when the prices were low, or obviously you've moved back to Romania now, so was it a case where you kind of realized at some point, look, if we move to a cheaper country, we can actually start living our financial independence dream today instead of in 5 or 10 years' time?
It took a lot less time, and we didn't expect that. So again, what we did is to get into real estate. Yeah, the market was cheaper, a lot cheaper than now. Of course, back then we didn't know that. We thought it's expensive, and we didn't have any idea about investing in real estate. Got into real estate, but we also did other stuff. We started cleaning the staircase, the building, being a caretaker, a carer for the building that we lived in. That got in some money. Then I did some headhunting business just beside my normal work as a programmer, as a consultant. I was a freelancer. I was free to do whatever the hell I wanted, and I used that. So whenever I had a business idea, I just started to implement it if I thought it's worth implementing it. And I did very different stuff, and I didn't have any experience, any studies, anything about that. I didn't know anything about it. I just thought it's a good idea and just do it. And most of the stuff turned out to be lucrative. I wrote about most of the things on our blog, so I'm not going to go into detail. But just as a caretaker, one thinks, okay, what can you earn as a caretaker, as hoovering the staircase and things like that. And it turns out after 1.5 years that we did it, it was like something like 200 euros an hour. So, I mean, as a programmer, as somebody who studied for years and years and years, that's still an incredibly high salary, isn't it? So it's all about efficiency, starting doing something and then making it more efficient. Another example was that I started working on a website for somebody, updating a website. I have a fixed monthly fee, and I started optimizing it as far as I can. I started automating a lot of stuff, and I have an incredibly good hourly rate. It's over 100 euros hourly rate. And it's not even programming. It's all about editing, putting stuff online, and putting some pictures and text online. So it's ridiculous. But I truly believe there is so many options like that, so many possibilities like that, where you can earn a lot of money and not investing very much time in it. So it's all about efficiency.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can recall myself, Robert, when I had a handyman call one day to put up a cabinet in our bathroom. And this is back when I was literally tracking every minute of my time. So he walked in the door and he was going to put the cabinet up for me for 20 euros. And I literally started my timer because I went back to work. And after 2 minutes of timing, he came back in and said, okay, that's done. Thanks for that. What's the 20 euros? And out the door he went. So it was literally a case where it was a 2-minute job for him. If you work out the hourly rate on that, extremely high in terms of what he actually did. But at the same time, that would have taken me, 1 or 2 hours. It probably would have been crooked. I probably would have had to go and find a drill somewhere. So from my point of view, I was happy to pay it. And I was a happy client. The cabinet's still up there 6 years later, so he did a good job. And, he won as well because he was only, it was only a 5-minute drive for him, so it wasn't very far. So from that point of view, it was a case where everybody wins. But if I'd been a point where I'd gone, right, I'm not going to pay you 20 euros for 2 minutes work, then that whole arrangement wouldn't have worked. So it's a matter of thinking about the stuff differently, which I guess is what you've done. And obviously that's compounded over time. And I guess one thing I want to touch on too, which is certainly something that I've noticed that I do myself, is you mentioned that you started a whole lot of these various projects and various things and various little businesses. But a lot of people would probably be listening in going, yeah, I mean, look, I've got great ideas, but I never execute. And I know many people who are always telling me about their great idea and they never execute. So how did you go from kind of coming up with something like caretaking or whatever the project was to actually getting off your chair and actually doing it? Was it just in your makeup? Was that the sort of person you are? Or did you have a particular technique that you used?
The short answer is don't get up your chair. There's this moment in my life when I was sitting in my office working on a different project. I had I had a break, and I had this idea that I could do headhunting. I went through the phase myself, coming from Romania to Germany, finding a job and so on, and getting myself self-employed. So I thought I could help others to do the same thing, to get self-employed, come to Germany, find an apartment and so on. So literally, I got this idea, and the next minute I grabbed the phone and I called a headhunting company to see how much these companies are asking. I lied to them saying that I was a company looking for a programmer and asked them how much they would bill to find me a programmer. So this is it. And when they told me the price, my jaw dropped. when they said something like, "Oh, we're charging 20%," and I said, "20% of what?" I had no idea about soul business, and he said, "Well, of course, 20% of the first year's salary," and I said, "Gross or net?" "Gross." What? I almost sweared on the phone, saying. So I said, to myself, I'm going to do this half price, and I'm going to do a lot more, and I'm still going to be happy. And this is what I did. I had zero connections. I just basically grabbed the phone, wrote a lot of emails, contacted companies that I didn't know, contacted a lot of people that I didn't know. That was starting from absolute zero, with no skills needed apart from having maybe a thick skin and being resilient when you hear no, no, no 100 times. And then 101st one says, yeah, let's do it. But coming back to your question, okay, how did we shorten the time from retiring at 50 to retiring at 32? We had this income, side income. We didn't spend very much, so we didn't know where to spend our money. We were happy. We bought everything that we wanted to buy. We were left quite frugal. But the other thing is, when you save money and at the same time earn a lot more than your salary, and my salary wasn't high. I wasn't. I mean, my first starting salary was something like 2,300 euros, and it slowly over 10 years or so slowly went up to, I don't know, 4.5K or something like that, of which I had to pay, of course, taxes and so. But even with that sort of money, you can save a lot. And when you have all this side income that exceeds at some point your normal salary, then it's great. Plus, somewhere around 2013, I started a little hobby website that over the years it turned out to be very lucrative. I love doing it. I still do it. So even though we're FI, I'm still doing this almost every day, an hour or so. I'm investing in this project. So yeah, that helped us a lot to earn more money. Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds to me like you basically kind of threw yourself into any opportunity that came along. Obviously, not all of these projects worked, I assume. I mean, it was probably a case where a lot of them did work out, some of them didn't, or at least some of them evolved into something else, maybe?
It was not really the case that the project didn't work. For example, I stopped doing all these headhunting and consulting business with freelancers. I started doing this because I just didn't really like it, even though it was incredibly lucrative. I never calculated my hour late, but it was well paid, and I just stopped doing it. So it's not really the case where it's it didn't work. It just got bored of it, or I wanted to focus on something else, and my focus slowly shifted towards my baby, my, as I call it, my little project that I started. That is a hobby and makes money at the same time.
Let's touch a little bit on that. So, at some point, you realized that you and your family were effectively financially independent. You moved back to Romania by the sounds of it. And I know that that was probably a little bit hard for you to get used to at first, given that maybe it wasn't something you'd always planned to do. But once you actually got into sort of out of that 9 to 5 job, so to speak, was it different to how you expected it? Was it, I mean, obviously it had happened sooner than you had anticipated, but was it kind of, I mean, was it different? Is life the same? Is it better? How does it compare to what you expected?
Well, it wasn't a change from one day to another. In 2015, was it? At some point, I was playing with my Excel sheet and I realized, hey, wife, I think we're FI, and then I showed her the numbers, and just to make sure I didn't make any errors, and all these estimations and my graphs and things like that. Just because of that, we didn't really make any changes right away. I was reducing the hours that I worked for one of my main customers anyway because I wanted to. So the change was, in steps. And just to be clear on that, we didn't decide to move to Romania just because it's cheaper and just because it's, we want to be a FI and as soon as possible. So after we moved to a cheap country, that was not the case. We're planning to be a FI, and we did achieve a FI in Germany, calculating with German costs. And after that only, it was in 2016, I think, when we first so I think it was a year after we became FI when we first played with the thought to move to Romania, just because my parents were here, and we just simply my siblings and I would never thought about, okay, what's going to happen if they're going to get old and they're home there, because everybody's left the country. All my siblings left the country. So I thought, hey, we could move there theoretically. And then luckily Emma was all right with it, and we did it.
I know when I gave my presentation in Madrid, one of the criticisms that my presentation had, or at least some of the feedback that I had, was that because I'm, I guess, similar to yourself, or how you were as a freelancer, is that as a freelancer, we have this ability to scale down our time as we move closer to financial independence, which sounds very much like you did. So actually, Robert, it's actually quite inspirational what you're saying in terms of how you did it, because it's exactly how I want to do it as well. I mean, obviously I'm working part-time now, but I can eventually move down to maybe a 2-hour day, and then maybe just a 1-hour day, and then maybe the odd hour here and there. And so for those people who have a job, and I guess I'm asking to try and answer this question for both of us. I mean, you mentioned at some point that you were working somewhat full-time. Do you think it's possible to scale down as a full-time employee, or are we at a real advantage being able to scale down as freelancers? Or do you think it's a case where, if you do want to scale down, it's a matter of finding a job that might give you the option to go part-time eventually, or is there a different approach altogether?
The question that I would ask somebody who's thinking about, scaling down and trying to build up his own business or do something else is, how much time does he spend on Facebook or in front of TV or Netflix every day? And in all that time, how much stuff you can learn, how much new skills can you learn to help yourself towards FI? So there's plenty of possibilities. And once you make money out of your hobbies, you make money out of your passions beside your full-time work, then scaling down your full-time work is going to be a natural process. I think that's how it was for me, and that's what I think it's doable for everybody. I pretty much I was a freelancer, but I basically had a full-time job for a couple of customers. So I wasn't any different in time management, to put it like that, than any other employee in my situation. But yeah, I came home and I did programming for 2-3 hours every night for several years, and I just used all my free time when I didn't have anything else to do, any other ideas, or we didn't travel. So I just used it to try out my ideas.
I'm starting to catch a little bit of a theme as well from some of the other guests I've had on the show. So I had a guy on episode 23 called Guy Davis, and he was an engineer. He was living in Australia. He went and worked on the mines for, I think, 2 years. And in that time, he basically doubled his salary, but he was working extremely long hours. And he said that ability to actually earn effectively 2 incomes in 1 year was really the catalyst for him to be able to, I guess he's now semi-retired. So from that point of view, it sounds like your story was similar. And I think that's really good advice as well. And like, if this is something that you do want to make as a proper goal, you need to be thinking about, right, can I make more sacrifices now? And I mean, you could probably vouch it as well. I know that you've got a child now, so obviously it's a lot harder once you have children. So, if you don't have children, then this is really your time to be considering to try something. And it's not instant gratification, which is a challenging part. I'm sure that you could probably give me better examples than I can. But, you start these projects and it might be 6, 12, 18 months until you actually start seeing money come from it. In many cases, that's kind of the problem with doing a lot of this stuff, is we're so used to working and getting paid. And when it comes to actually starting something and not getting paid straight away, it could be a challenging mindset to kind of get to. And I think, when you gave that story about the headhunting story about, you had 100 phone calls and you had 100 no's, and then on the 101st you had a yes. Your ability, there must be something in you, Rob, to have that ability to constantly know that it's going to work out, or to keep going, because I think for so many of us, we would give up at sign of failure. Whereas it sounds to me that something sort of programmed in you, if you like, to just constantly keep going. Because I know that I feel that way. I mean, I'm constantly told no, but I constantly find a way to make it work and to kind of continue the conversation, if you like. So, I mean, would you say that's a fair reflection on how you are?
I think the point here is that after every phone call or after every try, you learn something. You have to think for a moment what you did wrong and learn from that. And the next call should be a bit better and better and better. So this is how you learn. This is how everybody learns. You learn from your mistakes. I think you have to just keep doing it and don't give up. If you believe it has a future. Now I think about what Robert Kiyosaki wrote in his book several times, I think. Gut feeling. It's really difficult to describe But if you have this gut feeling that it has to work, and you question that all the time, every time where you fail, you question it, and when your gut feeling says, no, actually at some point it has to work, then just keep doing it.
I've got a question for you, Rob, and this is something that I do in my own mind. But do you ever see it in your head before you actually get it? I mean, did you see yourself financially independent at age 32? Did you see some of these projects as a success before you'd even, before it had even become anything? Like I can see myself being 40 and being retired. I've seen it from some of the success I've had with setting up various hockey clubs and things like that. I know they're going to be successful before I've even really tackled it. It's like something exactly that, my sort of gut feeling. But it's like I'm so confident in myself, but at the same time, there's no real evidence to say that I should be confident. It's just this gut feeling that I will find a way, no matter what is sort of thrown in front of me. Is that something that you would relate to?
Well, Excel helps. So when you open your numbers, when you open your expenses, and when you open your statistics and what's the word to predictions, Excel has this nice feature of selecting some cells from the present, from the months of the last 10, 12 months, and so on, and then you drag it in the future, and at some point in 20 and 40 and whatever number of months, you're FI, then you see yourself FI, right? So that is the questions. Yeah. Once you look at it, you see the point where when you're becoming FI. I made some mistakes in my graphs, and I saw myself FI a lot later than I actually we actually became. So it was quite funny. Because I'm normally too optimistic. My always tells me that I'm too optimistic, but at that moment or at that time, I didn't factor in some stuff that that generated money or was lying in our accounts and so on. So and that actually made difference. But of course, that was all mathematic FI that we reached because we kept earning money. And this is we talked about it in Madrid. A lot of people that are FI are still making money. So you have to know that, and you have to factor that in, and maybe think about that in a different way.
Very good. No, that's a fair point. And I mean, that was actually the kind of the last question I have in regards to your investments, or at least how they worked. Was obviously with the rental income, I'm assuming it was on a month-to-month basis that you became financially independent. So was it actually the cash flow that the rental income was giving you that you considered yourself to be FI because that was covering your expenses? Or was it a case where you had built up X amount of capital and you felt that capital was going to be able to, you were going to be able to live off that at some sort of safe withdrawal rate?
We always thought about early retirement at the moment when enough debts are paid off so that the cash flow from the real estate income covers our expenses, and we didn't factor in the money that we keep making, salaries, different projects, or just reserves that we have. And if to factor in how long can you live off those sums of money, that together, basically, this is how we figured out. Okay, we're fine. The cash flow and the reserves and investments together.
And tell me, Rob, what's happened to you if you meet somebody for the first time outside of the FI community? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming you don't tell them that you're retired, or what's your what story do you give them, and how did friends and family react when they heard this news, or did you just keep it kind of quiet and you just could have let life go on? I mean, I don't know about yourself, but certainly even myself going to part-time work, nobody ever really notices, right? Like it's between me and my family, and my clients don't really know, my friends don't even notice any different. Yeah, life goes on. Does anything change when you actually officially become FI and you kind of cut back from a full-time job? What was the reaction from friends and family, I guess?
Well, we're not telling anybody that we're FI. People around here, they don't know about the concept of FI. I do have some projects where educational projects that I do for no money, just to give something back to my community and to the young people around me, to teach them about investments, about real estate, about self-employment, and so on. I invite speakers and stuff like that. People see that I'm doing all of this, or I feel at home at all these topics, and I even gave a talk about financial independence without telling them I'm FI, about different strategies and so on. But people are generally not really interested. All they see is this maybe smart guy, lucky, and strange. This is probably what people think. I'm strange because I collect rubbish and I don't go to work anywhere and I don't drive a car, so I must be strange. And then I give talks about self-employment and how to make money. So they don't know what to make out of this. So I'm strange.
I know what you kind of mean, because I sense that kind of, what's this guy doing coaching hockey on a Friday afternoon when he should be at work? And, I sense this from parents as well here where I live. So and that's only me working, part-time. So I can only imagine what you're going through, picking rubbish up and not driving a car and giving great talks about this stuff. So let's go back. Let's talk a little bit about rubbish and you picking it up. A recent episode I did where I actually talked about my experience in Madrid with the conference, and you were so passionate when you shared your story about what you're trying to do with the environment in your town and some of the problems that you're going through. And I guess part of the reason for you being on the show was that I know that I've got a feeling in my heart that there's somebody in Ireland who, if they're not listening to this podcast, they will know somebody that will be able to help you. So what I would like you to do now is, I guess, share the story about what you're actually doing. And the reason that this is so interesting is because it's proof of the pudding that when you actually have the option and you have time available of what you can actually do that isn't motivated by money. So, share your story, Rob, with us in regards to what you're doing with the rubbish, but also obviously how maybe somebody in Ireland could help you around maybe trying to remove some of the corruption that's going on.
Yeah, so it all started when we moved back to Romania about 2.5 years ago. And I just couldn't stop seeing all this rubbish lying around. That rubbish was lying around when I left, and I didn't really notice because it was normal. And this is what Romania looks like. You just look everywhere and it's full of rubbish. But I started asking questions. I started, I came back with this making things work more efficient mindset. And I thought I had some good ideas how to optimize this and where to ask. And I started asking the mayor, the town hall. I started asking the company that collecting the rubbish and so on. And I put together a number of ideas, a number of things that could be optimized from the town hall or from other key people and key organizations here. For example, why does nobody, does like half of the city does not have a bin? Because this is what's happening. If you don't have a bin, you throw your rubbish somewhere, and you don't have any other option just beside throwing it in the nature, right? So this is why everything's full of rubbish. So I started asking questions like that. There's so many little stories like that where it's incredible. The tip on the iceberg is that there's this lake. In this town we have a nice little lake area, and one of the lakes is just filled with rubbish every day by all sort of people, all sort of plastic and styrofoam and fridge and washing machines and everything you can imagine, from tires to really weird materials that even companies throw there, all sort of stuff. So I was just sad and I was just revolted to see all that. And I wrote an email to the town saying, "Come on, what's going on here?" And then I figured out that they're actually doing it themselves as well. So this is how they can't fine anybody doing that, because it's illegal. Even in Romania, this stuff is illegal, but they don't find anybody because they're doing it themselves, because it's just cheapest way of getting rid of a lot of the rubbish that they collect in the city. So I'm having a hard time here. They do some of the stuff. They did pick up some of the ideas that didn't cost them any money, and just that they could do to inform the population about the fact that they're obliged to have a bin, for example, or so on. But it's too little. Nobody gets a fine here. The police doesn't care about that. So I'm really struggling. Having major milestones reached here. But anyway, the long story short, there are some pretty good results here that I can show. We started, I teamed up with some volunteers here, and we're doing a lot of Facebook campaigns and talking to people and so on. So the recycling rate in the town went up a lot, by a really incredible amount. So I think it's about 5 or 6 fold within, let's say, 1.5, 2 years. the recycling rate went up, but it was like incredibly low. So it was probably like, I don't know, 1-2% recycling rate, which is laughable. So it went up to, let's say, 10% or something. Of course, it's not enough, but it's nice to have this feedback. Keep doing all sort of stuff like go and collect rubbish from that pond, and actually sell it to some companies that are located in this town, and actually pay for plastic bottles, pay for aluminum cans, pay for glass, and so on. I try to teach other poor people that, hey, there's money in this. Why don't you go there and collect all the rubbish, and then the thing doesn't get into the lake, and then you can make money and everybody's happy, right? Well, it turns out it's difficult. But anyway, my newest plan is to draw a bit more attention on this issue, because authorities don't really like to take action. And I want to organize a little environmental conference here. And I want to find some experts in this area. Could be expert, or could be just enthusiasts, and could be people that have experience in environmental stuff. I want to invite them over here for a weekend or so, and just to draft a paper with things that could be done to solve the problem of the rubbish in this town, and just hand it in to the mayor, right? Just to help them, right? Give them ideas and so on. Maybe the press comes along and covers the stories. And yeah, this is something that could have an impact. Maybe it doesn't, but I'm optimistic as always.
And we have to remember that Romania is part of the EU, right? So they should be complying with EU laws on this. And it is a case where there's clearly corruption going on, and this shouldn't be going on at all. And, whatever we can help to make sure this doesn't happen, we should be doing.
Absolutely. I'm not saying that this particular issue has anything to do with corruption. I can't identify a reason why it should. It's just plain ignorance and stupidity. This is it. I mean, why should people bother sorting out the rubbish when they have more important stuff to do? And I'm saying this is really bloody important stuff to sort out, because I don't want to throw I don't want to see rubbish thrown in the lakes where I spent my childhood. This is not happening.
It's an amazing contrast, Robert, because here in Ireland now, like we have housing estates where, I live in a housing estate, and whenever there's rubbish reported as being dumped somewhere, it's up on the Facebook page, people are in disgust, the community will get out and clean it up on a Saturday morning and make sure that it's gone. We have a Tidy Towns committee here that is picking up rubbish every single day, and they're usually volunteers. So it can change. It will change over time. I've got no doubt it will, because, I've seen here in Ireland where, rubbish is completely unacceptable, and it does drive people crazy whenever there is rubbish. So it's about educating the population as well. But, the more attention that we can be giving to this, the better. So I guess my reach out to the audience, and there must be somebody here that has an idea for Robert or could help him, or maybe could just give him some advice to link up. So, by all means, do reach out to him. And Rob, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they need to reach out?
Find me on Facebook, Robert White, in the Financial Independence Europe group. You'll find me, or just drop me an email, wlcbblog@gmail.com. But yeah, Ireland is boring, man. It's just really boring. There's just no rubbish lying around. If you go to Germany, you just die out of boredom, right, when it comes to rubbish. So come to Romania if you have any experience with this, or if you just simply like to help collect some rubbish, raise some awareness, discuss, and try to make a change in a little town. And the thing is, this is a little town. There's like 10,000 inhabitants. This is a place where you can actually have an impact. So yeah, if you're interested, just drop me an email, and hopefully you can start organizing this soon. I would love to meet some people who are interested to help.
Excellent, Rob. And look, at the same time, obviously, while you're there, you can obviously be helping them on their own financial independence journey as well. So no doubt there's some free advice going whilst rubbish is being collected.
Absolutely. I'm gonna show them all the little dirty secrets how to become FI overnight.
Excellent. Now, look, before we wrap up, we better talk little bit more about FireHub and what you and your wife have set up. And obviously, I'm involved in the community online now, and going to the conference was amazing and such an eye opener for me. Give me a little bit of a background on why you guys decided to set up FireHub, what you do, and how the audience can actually reach out and get more information from, I guess, what you guys are doing at FireHub.
Basically, back then in 2015, 16, something like that, there was absolutely nothing about financial independence in Europe. There were some blogs in Germany, there's some blogs in the UK and so on, but only a few. But there's nothing that basically tried to bring together all the stuff, all the information, all the blogs, and all the knowledge about FI in Europe. Because we were all reading about this 401ks in US, and Matt Fientist writing amazing articles, Mr. Money Mustache, and Jim Collins, and so on. And we're all learning a lot from them. But a lot of the stuff is we just can't relate to. I had this idea, and I even came up with the name FireHub back then, and I even reserved a domain, but it just didn't get to actually do anything with it. And then we're organizing these financial independence weeks, Europe. This is what it's called. And we organized this in 2016. The first time, 2017, we had the first proper conference with 25 people. It's all non-commercial stuff, just to meet and talk about FI, make friends, exchange some ideas. You saw in Madrid what it's all about. And yeah, we actually, 5 or 6 of us just sat down in my office in the house that we rented and just started FireHub. Started collecting blogs, started collecting articles that were interesting and relevant for a lot of people to read. This is when FireHub got born. We have a list of over 200 blogs from all over Europe. Collect all the blogs in every language, but we create articles in our front page, and for the newsletter only from the English-speaking blogs. We have a wiki. We have an events page where we try to collect, and anybody can suggest events that are happening, meetups that are happening all over Europe about FI. We're trying to cover all the podcasts that are going on in Europe. So it's pretty much trying to bring everything that's anything to do with FI. Anybody can go and sign up to the newsletter, visit the page. You get an email once a week with absolutely no advertisement. This is not a commercial thing. With the latest articles that were written in Europe in English, and they could be relevant to anybody in the UK or in Germany or in Spain or wherever. We have a number of curators. We're a team of a few people that have monthly Skype calls and trying to make it better, make it look nicer, make it reach more people, make the content more relevant. And we're actually creating manually every single post. Everything that is written in English in Europe, we're trying to read. Somebody's reading it and writing a sentence or two about it and posting it out and posting it into the Facebook group, Twitter, and so on. In the newsletter, a lot of stuff is automated because I like efficiency, but the creation is actually manual, and there are really some wonderful people working at this for absolutely no money, just for the community. I hope that more and more people discover it. We have some uncharted territory in France, for example. I don't know what France is doing. I think they're just eating cheese and drinking wine all the time. I have no idea, but Spanish people are very active for some reason. They have some really huge conferences about FI in Spanish, though. In the UK, stuff is going on. We've been there to meet up. There's a weekly or monthly FI meetup in London. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's getting more and more. But it's nice to have a place that is ours, that is for the European community, and this is what we're trying to create.
That was a great description, mate, and I really do appreciate your work that you're doing on that, and it is a great resource, and it's certainly something that I'm signed up with, and I really do enjoy the Facebook page that you guys have, and there's always seems to be loads of content going on as well. So I will post links to the Facebook page, the newsletter sign up, and I think there's a Facebook group as well. Well, and Robert, thank you so much for your time. It's been really great today just to hear your feedback and some of the stuff that you mentioned about how you were able to do this, the fact that you just really pushed yourself to get your side hustles going while having a full-time job. You were crunching your numbers and realized that you'd actually achieved it before you'd even realized it, so to speak. And I think it's inspirational what you're doing. And, the fact that you're living this very kind of simple life now in Romania, going around trying to just help the community is wonderful. And I really do wish you all success with the project that you're working on at the moment around getting the environment there sorted.
Thanks a lot. And thanks for having me. And hopefully we meet again in one of the European conferences. And I just really encourage everybody to go to a real life conference, meetup, where you meet other like-minded people and just learn from each other to see what FI is really about.
I couldn't agree more, Rob. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Here are a few ways you can support the show. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. If you're using Apple Podcasts, why not leave a review? Become a member at firepodcast.ie and get access to free resources to help on your FI journey. Thanks again for your continued support.